The freedom to find out what the truth is. That's why I won't call myself a truther, because I don't know what the truth is. I know what the truth isn't, which is pretty well everything they tell us. But what is the truth? And I'd like to know as much as anybody else, but the fact of the matter is we don't have the freedom to know. People can go out there and pretend that they're gurus and pretend that they know all this and know all that. Most of the time they don't. I mean, even when we discovered Tartaria and discovered the ancient civilization that exists right under our noses, right in all of our modern cities, just scattered in amongst it. You know, when we first discovered that, it made me realize that everything I thought about history is wrong. I mean, I knew history was wrong. I wrote a book about it. I wrote all this stuff, and I still agree with a lot of the stuff that's in the book. But so much of it was all based on the concept that the timeline was correct. It was all based on the concept that, you know, we'd actually built these cultures up from the ground up, and it was done by our societies. And not that we moved in and simply took over real estate, but we did. That's all we did. So, you know, the truth, whatever you think the truth is, seems to be subject to change. You know, the truth seems to be based on what people believe the truth to be, which is why I've often said belief is the enemy of knowledge. You've got to establish the freedom to find out what the truth is, and don't allow yourself to believe anything. If you're going to believe in anything, believe in your own sovereignty, believe in your own freedom, believe in your own power to make change, your own power to have the idea that could change the world, no matter what your status in society. You know, no matter whether you're rich or poor or physically able or not. You could still have the idea that could change the world, because everything that we see here is all based on ideas. It's just an idea.
All around the world, you see this recurring theme in different cultures, and it's described in different ways, but exactly the same in theme. We have a force, an expression of this Wetiko that takes a reptilian form. And the cultures around the world, again and again and again, when they're doing their creation myths, then some kind of reptilian, lizard-like, snake-like entities are described. So if you take the biblical version, you have Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And Adam and Eve are symbolic of, first of all, what humans were like before what became known as the fall. What the hell was the fall? The way I've seen this is that there was once not something that you'd call human. It was a state of consciousness that was experiencing a world, a frequency band that was like the one we're experiencing, but on a much higher level of awareness, consciousness, frequency. So things weren't happening in dense matter and low, slow frequencies. They were happening on a high frequency. Things were much more ethereal.
That there is a field of energy, and that we have the language to use that field. This is an actual page out of the Gospel of Thomas. So we know that this ancient gospel actually existed. And you can see some of the letters. These are Greek letters. You can actually read some of, if you know Greek, you can see some of the Greek letters right here. In the Gospel of Thomas, two very important keys. This was written right around 300 years after the time of Jesus. In this gospel, okay, so here's what we're doing. We've been in the Buddhist monasteries in Tibet, and they're telling us that that feeling is the prayer, one. Two, that we must feel as if our prayers have already been answered. Okay, and now we're in an Egyptian monastery with the texts that used to be our tradition before they were edited. And we're going to look at the instructions that tell us how to do that. Okay if we do that? Is that good? Okay. Gospel of Thomas. If you have a copy of the Gospel of Thomas, this is verse 106, translated from the Nag Hammadi Library. And if you do not have a copy, it's in our books, and you can go to any library and pick this up. Verse 106. Look at what the Lost Gospel of Thomas says. It says, when you make the two, thought and emotion, one. So the Gospel of Thomas is talking about thought and emotion. It's saying when you make your thought and your emotion one, look at what happens. You will say to the mountain, mountain, move away, and the mountain will move away. Saying that when you can marry your thought and your emotion into one single potent force, that is when you have the power to speak. Let's go back to the Gospel of Thomas, another verse. Now this is verse 48. It says almost the same thing. This was so important that it was recorded at least 3 different times in the same gospel. Look at what this says. If the two make peace with each other in this one house. When Jesus is talking about the house or the temple, what is he talking about? What is he talking about? Precisely you. You are the house. You are the temple. If the two make peace with each other in this house, if thought and emotion become one, if they make peace with each other in this house, look what happens. They will say to the mountain, move away, and it will move away. He's telling us again in a completely different verse how powerful it is to marry thought and emotion. But they still haven't told us how. How do you do this? That's the next piece. In the early Christian Bible, your Bible today, there is a passage. How many have heard, ask and ye shall receive? Have you heard that before? Ask and ye shall receive. Have you heard that? I know people that ask and ask and nothing happens. Because the asking is not done with the voice. The asking is not done, please, please bring this to my world. That's not asking. To ask, we must speak to the field, to the divine matrix in the language that the field recognizes. And a language that's meaningful. The field doesn't recognize our voice, it recognizes the power of our heart. Remember this morning, our heart, we have a feeling, creates electrical waves, magnetic waves. That's the language the field recognizes. So when you create the feeling in your heart as if your prayer is already answered, that creates the electrical and the magnetic waves that bring that answer to you. And you're going to see this in just a moment. Ask and ye shall receive. While we still have this passage in our text, in the Bible that you have today, the King James Version, John 16, 23, 24, what you have is the condensed version. You have the edited version. The edited version looks like this. This is the edited version. Whatsoever ye ask the Father in my name, he will give it to you. Hitherto have ye asked nothing in my name. Okay? Ask and ye shall receive, that your joy may be full. Okay, this is the edited version. This is so amazing to me because they took out the 2 sentences that tell us how to ask.
Ask and it shall be given you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. opened. That sounded pretty optimistic again. But again, I think it's a description of the structure of existential reality. And by which I mean, when I'm in my clinical practice and I observe, and this is also the case with my students, is let's say, people's lives aren't what they would like them to be. And so then you ask, why? Well, forget about tragedy and catastrophe, because that's self-evident, and we're not going to discuss that. Although the degree to which you bring about your own tragedy is always indeterminate. But I would never say that every terrible thing that is visited on a person is something they deserved. I think that that's a very dangerous presupposition, especially because everyone gets sick and everyone dies. But one of the main reasons that people don't get what they want is because they don't actually figure out what it is.